I guess since we're gonna go there, and I guess with mining and stuff, one of the first situations that I have always dealt with, and deal with more often than any, is just the random person. One, maybe two people who aren't there necessarily to pirate you, but you're out there, you're playing the game, whether you're mining, you're cargo hauling, or you're just flying around doing whatever, and somebody comes around and they want to kill you. What's that engagement like now, and what do we think it's going to become in the future? I guess we'll start with Jonathan, because we'll start with Letty when we get into the more piracy aspects of the game and organized stuff.
Well, I mean, it comes down to a lot of things, right? So the main thing I would say is scanning is going to be huge, because locating these people in such a vast universe is going to be difficult, unless scanning is something that makes it much more easy to do. Aside from that, the only thing that I see as a concern to most casual players is going to be choke points. So any entry point into areas, any entry into stations themselves, is probably the most dangerous thing in the game.
Okay. Well, I agree with, like, scanning will be important, and it is somewhat important now. I think Letty can probably touch on that. I'm more talking about a situation where maybe you've already scanned and you've found me, and now what, right? That's kind of what the situation that I'm talking about here is. You found me, I may see you on my radar, I may not. What's the engagement like now in Star Citizen 317, and how do we think it changes for the better or for the worse in 318?
Okay, so it depends if they have a way of locking you down, because the only way they're going to be able to pirate is if they have something like a mantis or some form of webifying like EVE Online had that would not allow you to escape. If that's not the case, and maybe they do cargo where you get disabled and then all of a sudden they can just loot you, then they're probably going to disable you within like 5 seconds, especially if it's something like 5 light fighters coming at you. There's no way you're going to run from that in time, unless you were aware of your radar and you caught it and you were able to dip in the other direction as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. What about a situation where it's just like one other person? That's the situation I started with. We talked a lot since then. One person,
you're fine. You're gonna get away. I mean,
just hit B and fly away, right?
Yeah. Even if we have these slower models, what it comes down to is acceleration. There's only so fast a reaction you can react to, and if you have enough of a gap to get distance, you can get away. It's not a problem.
Yeah, and the one thing that I always thought is weird about the current game is anytime you get new contacts and they're blue, it doesn't really say anything, right? You have to look at your radar, but if they're red, it'll be like contact, and you're like, oh shit, somebody's here, and they're red, let me run. So the current game is like interesting. I wonder if we can eventually set the radar a little bit and decide to say contacts more often or something. But that was my one thing that I wasn't like in the current model. I feel like running is quite simple in a lot of ways, unless you're going against an organized group. Virgil, I'll let you jump in on that one real quick. Is like
it's
the one or two players.
No, like anyone can run from anyone. It's
yeah.
Like if you were to put two sweaty groups against each other, now in any scenario that's like above 3 players, it becomes fuel tank dependent. Like time to kills hours. So. It's just, you can't even close a fight out with the max speeds right now. That's why, like, for example, when Jumptown comes around, it's like, you're waiting for microtech, which basically simulates what this flight model is going to do, right? Which, through the gravity settings on that moon, it's far tighter, and it slows everything down and kind of gives you a sense of, what the future's going to be like. But in space it just doesn't work. The game just doesn't work. No one can kill anything, unless people decide to commit, and the meta is to try and recover your shields. So it just doesn't work at all. It's really bad. This should have come much sooner. But yeah, like I wouldn't even say that good groups can keep on top of good groups, because that doesn't exist.
The only time me and Jonathan have ever interacted in game was at Jumptown, and we I don't remember which jump town it was, but we ended up getting, as fights always do, you end up getting pulled away from the surface when we were up in space. And we didn't fight for that long because obviously, you know, my group isn't that experienced. But I end up just getting frustrated with the fight because it was just, I think it was my fault for flying too fast. But we eventually got up to those speeds that are just ridiculous. And then jousting started happening. And it was one of those things where, like, I felt if I was going to have any fun, it was commit. But when I commit, I'm dead. So it was just like, this blows. And
yeah, and you're forced into it yourself. Like, it's,
yeah.
You know, if you want to play honorably, you lose. You know, it's what it comes down to.
You've done a lot of pirating people like myself. We've actually had a little run in at one point. And the way that we interacted was a little bit different than the scenario that I'm bringing up. But if you happen to be scanning around, say, I don't know, Illyria or another moon that people might be mining on, if it's rock mining, you know, in Hurston, let's say, and you just happen to find somebody, how would you engage me, let's say, and what would the opportunities for me to get away be now in the game? But then we'll go around again and we'll talk about what it could be like in the future and why it's better or not.
Is that to me?
Yes.
So if you're in Lyria, and you're just solo and a prospector, as a pirate, if you're running solo or with maybe one person, there are only really two ships are useful right now for solo piracy, and that is the RSI Mantis and the Cutlass Blue. Yeah. Because the QED is just, it makes such a big difference in piracy. It's kind of a required thing. If
you can't tackle, you can't stop me from running, basically, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Because quantum travel is just so. In the current build, it's just the most overpowered ship ever. Yeah. It's like you just point at location and just go away. You don't need any sort of warning to do that. Yeah. And you can't even tell when a ship is quantum traveling.